For a while now, I've been really interested in video game challenge runs. It doesn't really matter what game or what challenge, just seeing people try to play games in ways that they very clearly weren't designed to accommodate is such a fascinating thing to me. I've seen challenge runs on the internet that range from cool ideas for how to play a game you're already familiar with, to borderline masochistic forms of self-torture for the sake of other people's enjoyment.
It's been like 45 minutes. Oh, that is illegal.
Thank you, Parkser.
And I love all of them. I've been wanting to do my own challenge run for a while now. Not even for a video, just in general. I have done some very basic challenge runs in the past, usually ones built into the game, like time trials or no-hit challenges. The main reason I haven't really done any bigger or crazier challenge runs is because they're either way too hard to the point that they don't seem fun at all, or they take way too long to the point that I'd get sick of it halfway through. But then I found out about Pokemon Nuzlocks, and these things caught my attention in a way that no other challenge run has. If you clicked on this video, I'm pretty sure you know what a Nuzlocke is, so I'm not going to waste time explaining that. All you need to know is that Nuzlocke stood out to me personally because of the way they get the player invested in the challenge by making them form connections with the team that they build themselves. This concept is fucking awesome to me, and ever since I found out about them, I've wanted to try one out for myself. However, I have never played Pokemon before, and given how the newer games look, I don't really think I want to. Obviously, there are other creature collectors out there. I've even played some of them, like Yokai Watch, or more recently, Pal World, and I adore both of these games and have played them both for hundreds of hours. People have even made Nuzlocke rules for both of these games, so I absolutely could have done my first Nuzlocke in one of them. But both games come with a catch. Palworld specifically is still pretty new and so different from what Pokemon is that there isn't really a definitive set of rules for a Palworld Nuzlocke yet, at least not that I could find. And for Yokai Watch, it is way closer to Pokemon in terms of game feel and structure, but I actually lost my copy of the game, and I don't know anything about emulation. So that was also off the table. People have made Nuzlocke rules for other games that aren't creature collectors, like Smash Bros. And even Enter the Gungeon, one of my favorite games ever. But those games, just like Palworld, are too different from Pokemon that the challenge doesn't really feel the same to me. Thankfully though, I managed to find a creature collector that I not only fell in love with as a whole, but after I beat it, the idea of doing a Nuzlocke in it immediately came to my mind, which is why I did my very first Nuzlocke in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Okay, so even though my channel isn't very big, I'm sure this video will bring in Pokemon people who have no idea what this game is, so I'm gonna be really quick here. The Like a Dragon games are a continuation / successor to the Yakuza series, a series of games where you're on a journey to find out how much blunt force trauma the average Japanese male can withstand. However, unlike the Yakuza games, which were basically 3D beat-em-ups, the two main Like a Dragon games take the form of turn-based RPGs. Now, first of all, no, this Nuzlocke isn't as simple as, if a party member dies, I can't use them ever again, because, like I said, the game is way too different from Pokemon to suit what I'm looking for in my Nuzlocke, and you only have 10 party members anyway, so there wouldn't even be a whole lot going on in terms of people joining or dying. No, in fact, my Nuzlocke has pretty much nothing to do with Infinite Wealth's main story at all. The Like a Dragon series is beloved for a lot of reasons, and one of the many is the quality and variety of side content that the games are filled with. You've got stuff like cards, darts, bowling, batting cages, shogi, the game no one knows how to play, and fishing, which are in almost all of the games in one way or another. It's essentially just Japanese Wii Sports, but with a pinch of gambling sprinkled around. But then, you've got the weird shit. I'm talking street racing, business tycoons, a hunting simulator, boxing, battle bots, sports team management, Mario Kart, real-time strategy, army builders, slot cars, Coliseum death matches, Crazy Taxi, fucking Tinder, dozens of real-life arcade games that actually exist. I'm not making this shit up. There's like 5 different rhythm games in this series. The newest game is gonna have pirate shit in it. While not all of these are winners, most of them are, and all of them are very well made. And some of these minigames are so filled with content that if they just had a little bit more stuff in them, they could be considered their own games, like the taxi shit or the hunting simulator. And by far, one of the most fleshed out pieces of side content in this entire series, and the focus of my Nuzlocke today, is Infinite Wealth's Sujimon League. Now, the concept of Sujimon was actually introduced in the first Like a Dragon game, and there, it was really only made as a joke. Like a Dragon is filled with references to other RPGs. Sujimon is just one of the more on-the-nose ones, with you literally meeting a guy called Professor Morikasa, yes, that is a tree name, who also goes by the name Sujimon Sensei, and he ends up giving you the Suji Dex, which is the game's bestiary. By the way, there's no cutesy creatures in these games. Sujimon are literally just random dudes you fight in the street. That's basically where the concept begins and ends. I'm pretty sure that the only reason they came up with Sujimon at all was so that their enemy wiki would look more fun and stylized and less like a criminal database, because that is literally what this is. You think Pokedex entries are dark? Look at Chucklehead. This guy's a human trafficker. But when they started working on Infinite Wealth, they decided to take this joke and expanded it into an entire Pokemon clone with its own unique gameplay, a self-contained story and cast of characters, gyms, type advantages, evolution, integration with other aspects of the game outside of its main gameplay, and 135 different Sujimon to catch in an optional side mode that you get for free. And if you couldn't tell by now, this side mode absolutely hooked me. When I found out about this shit, I instantly looked online absolutely everywhere I could to see if anyone had already done a Sujimon Nuzlocke to see what kinds of rules I would need to follow. But I found nothing. I couldn't find anything on YouTube, Twitch, not even on fucking Reddit. As far as I can tell, no one has even considered doing a Nuzlocke in this game. But the idea of doing a Sujimon Nuzlocke sounded so fun to me that I decided I would just make the rules myself. This video isn't just about me attempting my first Nuzlocke. I'm also going to be sharing the rules I ended up making for my first run, as well as the new rules I made after I realized how fucking terrible the first ones were. Speaking of the rules, if you know anything about Nuzlockes, I'm sure there's some I've included that you've come to expect. I have to beat all 4 gyms and the champion, I have to name every Sujimon I catch, and of course,
if he dies, he dies.
Those are all pretty self-explanatory. However, in terms of when the challenge ends, I'm not just going up until I beat the champion. Because Sujimon is a side mode and is thus relatively short compared to an actual Pokemon game, I'm moving the goalpost back a bit so that I have to beat every stadium challenge and the secret final boss that unlocks after beating the champion. Oh, whoever could that be? Here's another relatively obvious rule. DLC Sujimon are banned because these things are literally just instant win buttons, and a handful of them are animals and women, which completely flies in the face of what Sujimon translates to. You also have to do the run on a new save that isn't on New Game Plus, since it carries over your trainer rank and Sujimon from your past game. This does unfortunately mean that you have to do a lot of stuff before you can even start the Nuzlocke, but once you get to the Anaconda Shopping Center, you can just make a save file right outside and you can load that at any time you want to do the Nuzlocke. Then I added a rule that after gaining access to the side mode, aside from one exception I'll get to later, I'm not allowed to progress the main story at all to avoid being over-leveled, since normal street fights are still a thing in Sujimon, and they don't scale with you. But this does mean if you're looking to play Infinite Wealth and don't want me to spoil anything, you don't have to worry because I talk about pretty much nothing outside of Sujimon in this video. The main story and other side quests are free for you to experience on your own. I debated for a while whether or not Sujimon should be banned, since you get it for free by walking past Suji spots, which are essentially just PCs from Pokemon, and I didn't want the challenge to be easily exploitable. Something that I failed to do, and you'll see that in the later bits of this challenge. But I decided to keep it because the game itself caps your level for you according to what gym you're on. Plus, I watched a ton of Pokemon Nuzlockes while coming up for the rules for this challenge, and I found out that Pokemon Nuzlockers actually use cheat codes to give themselves infinite amounts of XP candy to avoid grinding, so if it's good enough for them, then I guess it's good enough for me. All of that was very easy to come up with. Where I struggled with making rules was how to limit catching. Infinite Welt's map isn't sectioned off by routes like Pokemon, and there aren't enough specific areas for me to get a reasonable amount of Sujimon if I were to just catch one per area. What made this harder is that there are so many different ways you can get Sujimon in this game. The main way the game wants you to obtain them is through raid spots, which are points on the map where Sujimon of a specific type will spawn. Then after fighting them, you're able to catch one and add it to your team. However, you can also catch Sujimon from normal overworld battles outside of raids. Trainers you fight will also just give you a Sujimon for free after beating them, and to top it all off, there's straight up gacha machines that get you Sujimon by the boatload. I originally thought I could just limit myself to only catching one Sujimon per raid point, which could totally work, but because I can't progress through the story, the raids almost never have anything worth catching and have very little in terms of variety. Plus, there's only like 30 raid spots, and while that may be enough for a Pokemon Nuzlocke, trust me, it's not enough for Sujimon. Ultimately, I settled on being able to catch anything I wanted from raids as much as I want, mainly because the legitimacy of this first Nuzlocke wasn't too big of a concern for me, since I was using it to get a feel for my rule set, but also because of how evolution works in this game. If I'm being honest, evolving Sujimon is really easy. You can get a fully evolved team relatively quickly, but because of the Nuzlocke rules, evolution gets exponentially harder to do. In order to evolve any Sujimon in this game, you first need to awaken them, and this is done by feeding them other similar Sujimon down to the same evolution stage, or Suji League committee agents, who, because of another rule I set that I will get to, are in very limited supply, and because final evolutions are basically required for the late game, I need something to awaken my guys in some way, so I'm allowing myself to catch as many Sujimon as I want, at least for this first run. In terms of overworld fights and gifts from trainers, I made it so that I'm allowed to keep those, but only for the sake of using them as awakening fodder. They can't be put on my team whatsoever. I originally thought the gacha machines were going to be the hardest thing to regulate, but it was actually really easy. The gacha machines use tickets, which you get from beating trainers, doing stadium challenges, or walking past Suji spots, and there are multiple gacha tiers, each with their own tickets. You've got the common and type-specific gachas that both use common tickets, the Japanese Master Gacha that gives you rare Sujimon you can't catch normally since they only appear in Japan, and the Kiwami Master Gacha, which only gives you the 5 legendary Sujimon. My plan was to ban the 2 common gacha tiers, but leave the Japan and Kiwami Master Gachas open for use. And that may sound weird, considering they both give you way better Sujimon than the common ones, but the tickets for the common gachas are so easy to get that by the end of my Nuzlocke, I had over 700 of them. In contrast, the Japan Master tickets, especially in the early game, are way rarer than the common tickets. Plus, I wanted to be able to show off as many Sujimon as I could in this video for people who haven't played this game before. Keeping the Kiwami tickets may also sound like I'm just leaving the door open for people to get a full team of legendary Sujimon and steamroll the whole challenge, and I did consider that, but the only way to get the Kiwami tickets is by beating the legendary Sujimon in a raid, which is not only a rare spawn on its own, but they're also extremely over-leveled. So much so that they're a higher level than the final boss of the main game. Okay, so I know I said legendary Sujimon raids are really rare, but I've got 1, 2, 3, that's just one type, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of these spawned in at once. And I'm sure if there were any dark type ones active, there would probably be another legendary somewhere. So yeah, I kept it in. Not only because it's basically impossible to get one anyway, but I figured if you could somehow manage to beat one of these guys, you deserve to have them on your team. And those are the basic rules for the challenge, at least the ones that are relevant right now. There are a few more that I'll get to later. Again, these aren't the new rules that I've set. You can probably see lots of issues with these, even if you haven't played this game at all, but again, this was not only my first Nuzlocke, ever, but my first experience making the rules for one, so just cut me a little slack here. There are some points where I change the rules mid-run, so I'll bring attention to those when they happen, just so you understand why I start doing things a little bit differently. So now that I've finally explained everything, for now, I'm finally gonna get into talking about the actual run. And just so you know, I actually streamed my entire Nuzlocke right here on my channel. There's a lot of stuff that happened in those streams that I don't mention in this video, so go check those out if you want to see the full run. I don't have a set streaming schedule right now. I'm just trying to stream whenever I need footage for a video, since it not only gets you guys something to watch while I work on stuff behind the scenes, but it also helps me make that stuff, so it's a win-win for everybody. We're gonna get started here and play Yakuza Dead Souls. Let's flip over to the title screen. Hell yeah. Look at that. We're here. We're really here. I am still in school, so I'm gonna try and stream at least once every week. No promises, but hopefully I can get something more concrete in the future. Anyway, the story begins with our protagonist, Ichiban Kasuga, working a 9-to-5 job like an upstanding citizen. Then a bunch of other stuff happens until Chapter 4 of the game, where he and his party, consisting of the greatest Yakuza legend that ever lived, and some random taxi driver that tried to rob him at gunpoint, go to the Anaconda shopping center. While there, they run into Morikasa, who brings them down to the Sujigami PC shop, which has an entire stadium hidden underneath it. We also get a good look at King, the champion of the Suji League, and Jack, one of the members of the elite... Discreet 4. I don't think I can call anything about this game discreet. Morikasa then introduces me to Yasuo Sadachi and his students Karaki and Yokawa. These guys are actually in previous games, by the way. I love how this series has characters and overarching sub-stories that span multiple games. Seeing these guys show up in this side mode when I first played this game, it just put a huge smile on my face. Turns out, these guys are gonna act as my first team members. I did debate on whether or not I should be allowed to use Sadachi and his students, since I do get an actual starter soon, and it felt a bit weird to have 4 starters, but I settled on it being fine to use them, at least for the start of the run. I ended up replacing pretty much all of these guys eventually anyway. Sadachi isn't a bad Sujimon whatsoever, but Karaki and Yokawa kinda suck, so once I replaced them, I never used them again. I also didn't name them, since both I and the game still call them by their normal names anyway, and I didn't really catch them, they just kinda follow me, so I figured at least for these 3, names are optional. Anyway, after they join, Morikasa forces me into my first proper Sujimon battle, and... oh, fuck, I didn't explain how battles work. Okay, I'm gonna keep this as short as possible so that we can actually get into this. Your team can have up to 6 Sujimon on it, who all have one of this game's 5 different types, which do have their own names, but I'm just gonna call them Fire, Water, Grass, Light, and Dark. This is what the type matchups look like. It speaks for itself. Every single Sujimon battle basically plays like a Pokemon triple battle, with a few minor differences. On your turn, you get to do 2 things, swap and attack. Swapping allows you to switch the position of any 2 Sujimon on your team, however, you can only swap once per turn, and your turn ends immediately once you attack. It's mainly for putting a Sujimon in reserve if you don't want it to get hit, or moving it to a different spot to make use of type advantages and positioning bonuses, since they not only hit the Sujimon in front of them, but also whatever ones are next to it for a little less damage. The turn order depends on whose SP bar fills up the fastest, and the rate your SP bar fills depends on the cumulative speed stats of the 3 Sujimon you have out in front. Their speed stats also still contribute to the bar, even if they're dead. Attacks all cost some amount of SP, and your bar will start draining from wherever it's left afterwards, so being smart with what moves you use and having Sujimon with high enough speed stats can let you attack multiple times before the opponent can even react. Each Sujimon really only has 1 attack each, with it correlating to their type, but rarer or more evolved Sujimon tend to have a second ability which can be a way more powerful attack, or a move that heals the Sujimon you have out in battle. However, these cost MP instead of SP, which is represented by this bar here. The bar fills up whenever you attack, and the more damage you deal, the more MP you get. Just like normal attacks, MP skills cost varying amounts of MP, but no matter how much MP the move costs, using an MP skill will always fully drain your SP bar. MP skills will also always hit every opposing Sujimon, even ones that would be out of range from a normal attack, but while normal attacks are always guaranteed to hit all of their targets for consistent damage, the accuracy of an MP skill or the potency of healing depends on a wheel spin. It isn't luck-based though, the wheel stops immediately when you tell it to. Okay, that's the last major explanation I'm gonna do in this video. So now that battles have been explained, I kicked the tutorial's ass, and it's revealed that Morikasa was the original champion of the Suji League before being banned from competing after the money-hungry Suji League committee came in and took control over the stadium. Morikasa then drags Ichiban outside and begs him to take down the Suji League by beating King to make it the fun, wholesome, totally legal sport it once was, and he reluctantly agrees. And with that, I get to pick my starter. We've got a Grass Snake, a Jabber Jobber, and a Gangpunk. I picked the Grass Snake since Adachi is already a fire type, and grass types tend to have healing abilities, which I'm sure you can imagine will be extremely useful for my Nuzlocke, especially since there aren't items or anything in this game. So I beat the shit out of him, gave him a box of chocolates that I'm convinced is drugged in some way, and Wilter was added to my team. So now that the run is officially started, I had two goals. Find 2 more Sujimon to add to my team, and get my trainer rank up by fighting other trainers so I can challenge the first gym. So I hit the town doing a few low-level trainer fights that were no problem whatsoever, complained about the overuse of auto-tune in the English versions of some of the karaoke songs. It's just auto-tune. And it's bad auto-tune. And it's his only song, which is so stupid.
Maybe the next time I love you, you could be the only one.
And I went to a few raids to catch some new Sujimon, and wow, were these things harder than I thought they would be. Just fighting 3 guys was nearly impossible since pretty much every raid is a higher level than my party right now. Thankfully, I managed to brute force my way through a lot of them with Kiryu since he's overpowered as shit in this game. My biggest issue was that I didn't actually know what was worth catching. My first time playing through this game, I just used DLC Sujimon, so I had no idea what Sujimon would be good additions to my team. I didn't look anything up though, and I'm glad I didn't, because figuring out what Sujimon I liked, or which were broken as hell, was an incredibly fun part of this run for me. Anyway, after some running around, I caught a lone wolf that I named Blade Wolf since I played Metal Gear Rising for the billionth time not too long before playing this, and he filled the role of my water type, so now I had every type covered and just had to find 1 more Sujimon to complete my team, which I got in the form of a hateful Hakeyoi, I think is how you say that, that I named Big Low. Your name's gonna be... Low. Low. Big Low. There we go. Okay. I don't know why I called him that, because Big Low is the name of a character from Yakuza 6, but I know I wasn't thinking about him at the time, and he looks nothing like this. I think I was just really struggling to come up with a name, not just because it feels way weirder to name people who already have names when you catch them than cartoon animals, but also because this character limit for making the names is bullshit. This thing caps out at like 10 to 12 characters. How am I supposed to come up with a cool name with no space to work with? Palworld's names could be so long that the limit was practically non-existent, so I could name my pals literally anything I wanted, like Dick Grayson, Pika Chungus, Frank Sriracha, FurAffinity.com, names that immediately came to my mind when I looked at them, but here, I can't do that! Also, despite being an M-rated game, there's a lot of censorship for what you can and can't name your Sujimon, which is probably because of Dondoko Island's online functionality where you can fight other people's Sujimon teams, but why can't I name my blackmailer daemon Big Smoke? What's wrong with that name? Anyway, I went out and caught more grass snakes to evolve Wilter, and while doing that, I somehow managed to get a Japanese master ticket from a Suji spot. These things are so rare to get at this point in the run that I didn't even know you could get them, but I instantly used it and got a Bond Scientist that I named I Am Groot. I did take Wilter off the team solely because he was really weak at the moment, and I didn't really feel like losing my starter so early into the run, so I put I Am Groot on the team and headed for the first gym where— fuck off, Asakura! Anyway, Ichiban and his gang of freaks enter the light-type gym, the Regal Jack Hotel, and yes, Jack isn't just a discrete 4 member, he's also the gym leader. In fact, they all are, which honestly makes more sense than them being their own thing like in Pokemon. I've always seen the Elite Four as nothing more than glorified gym leaders with higher level teams. The gym leaders are built up as the masters of their respective teams, at least to me, so much so that they run the places where people learn to use and fight against them, but for some reason, the Elite Four, whose teams also revolve around one type, are considered better than them or different just because? What do they even do if they aren't gym trainers? Just stand around and wait for random 10-year-olds to show up and beat them? And they have actually done this before with Larry and Scarlet and Violet, and again, it makes total sense that he would be in the Elite Four since he's considered a master with normal types. Except he uses a completely different type here, are you fucking kidding me? So, unlike in Pokemon, there aren't any puzzles here. You just fight 2 trainers and then the discrete form member, and that's pretty much the same across all 4 gyms. I don't mind it too much though, since, again, this is an optional side mode. The fact that this is as extensive as it is now is enough to make me praise it. Anyway, given that Jack's grunts have teams mostly comprised of low-level first evolution Sujimon, they weren't hard at all. I did have one close call with I Am Groot, but aside from that, no one was lost. Although for some reason, despite this being a light-type gym, the first trainer has a very dark-type-centric team. No idea why, and I'm pretty sure no other gym has a trainer like this. It's very odd. So now it's time to fight Jack. I do really like how Jack is characterized here, by the way. He's essentially just a satire of every rich person ever. They don't even try to make him likable, he's just an asshole, but in the funniest way possible. How did you know I have such a thinly veiled fetish for breaking the will of the uppity poors? Jesus Christ. I do find it cool how they use bonds as a way to explain how Jack is the weakest of the 4. With the other members, you can understand to some extent how they might form bonds with their Sujimon that make them fight harder. Whether or not those bonds can be considered healthy is debatable, but Jack, having bought all of his Sujimon rather than catch them himself, doesn't have a bond of any kind with them. It's a real neat thing to think about. Also, there is an actual bond stat in the game. It does literally nothing in terms of my Nuzlocke, so hell yeah, let's buy our way to the top! Jack isn't really hard at all. I mean, this is the first gym, but I was playing really sloppily in this fight since the run thus far has been pretty easy. Yukawa almost got one-shot by Jack's dungeon troll, and Sadachi somehow managed to survive an MP skill with the smallest amount of health possible, but he managed to deal enough damage so Big Lo could end the fight with a coconut chop, and 0 deaths in the first gym. Hell yes! After beating Jack, King walks in with the rest of the discrete 4, Queen, Ace, and Joker. It's dumb, I know. King then asks Ichiban for his name before leaving, and Queen invites him to challenge her at her water-type gym, claiming it to be, in her words, an ode to the female form in all its glory. It's a hotel pool full of mostly men. And now that I've beaten the first gym, I've gotten 3 things that are essential for my Nuzlocke. First, I got 10 Suji League committee agents, which you get for beating each of the 4 gyms. Like I said earlier, these guys are the only other thing you can use to awaken your Sujimon aside from exact copies of them. But since they're very limited, I've got to be smart with who I use them on. Then there's the stadium challenges, which are all mandatory for my run. Thankfully, I can do them whenever I want, so I saved all of these for the end of the run. And finally, the Suji Master job. So, this is the thing that I mentioned I would need to progress a little bit of the main story for, since I can't actually swap jobs right now until I get to Chapter 5, meaning I'd have to go through an entire main story dungeon and fight Dwight at the end of it, but I didn't have a problem with that. I don't even really have a problem with the job combat-wise. It's actually pretty good, since it revolves heavily around elemental damage, which no other job really does. It's just that, personally, for a character-exclusive job that you have to go out of your way to get, this was one of the biggest disappointments for me in the whole game. Conceptually, this thing is awesome. The game markets it as a job that, rather than having equipable weapons, lets you assign a team of 1 Sujimon from each type to summon into the normal street fights to fight alongside you. That sounds fucking awesome! Originally, I thought it would function like how Pound Mates do, where you summon them in as an extra party member, attacking on their own while Ichiban's moveset focuses on buffs or healing to support the team. Or if they wanted to get really experimental, maybe your Sujimon could take the place of Ichimon entirely and you control them yourself, with each one having sort of a mini moveset that mostly caters to their elemental typing, and you being able to swap between them like how you can swap party members with the tag out function. Hell, because pretty much all of these guys can be fought in the street already, the Suji Dex already has movesets and stats that you could just copy-paste over with maybe a few tweaks here and there. The idea is sound, but no. This class is no different from every other job in the game. The Sujimon you bring with you function exactly the same as a weapon does. They are purely cosmetic and only serve to boost your attacking power. However, unlike weapons that boost your stats as a whole, the Sujimon you equip only boost 2 moves each. And I feel like, at the very least, they could have given you 2 different moves depending on what Sujimon you equip, since in battles, they have 2 moves. So, for example, if I were to equip Sadachi, I would get Sadachi Kick and Flaming Footwork, effectively letting you build your own moveset. Hell, even if they functioned the same, I wouldn't care, but instead, every Sujimon uses the same generic elemental moves, whether or not they suit them. Fire, Water, and Light all have attacking moves that are pretty much the same across all 3 types. Grass types only get to use healing moves, and Dark types get to occasionally poison people and fail to put them to sleep. You do have 2 super moves for the job, but they aren't cool either. I don't even think your Sujimon affect how strong these ones are. One lets you revive every downed teammate with half health, which is admittedly pretty good, and the other creates a spirit bomb by killing all of your Sujimon, which means I can't even use the damn thing. I'm still going to use the job since my Nuzlocke makes it way harder for me to get really good Sujimon, and again, it's not too bad in combat, I just really hate how boring this thing is. Anyway, I played through what I had to of the main story, unlocking not just Sujimancer, but also gender diversity. I also used my committee agents and a bit of raid farming to get Big Low, Wilter, and Blade Wolf up to their final forms. And I also recreated the most iconic characters in this series with a scarred Yakuza that I named Kiryu, a Shiver that I called Majima, and a gifted Gatherer I called Boogie Bag. The gang's all here! It was also during my grinding that I discovered who the best Sujimon in the entire game is. My Uber Eats delivery guy. That's not sarcasm, by the way. I summoned Charlie so many times during this run to just barely win some fights that I absolutely shouldn't have. This is even more proof that bikes are the most powerful weapons in these games. Since nobody died yet, there isn't a whole lot to talk about when it comes to preparation for the next gym. I mostly just fought a bunch of trainers and leveled up my Sujimon. I even fought some trainers that were stronger than me, and aside from a few close calls, they didn't give me any issues either. So I headed over to Queen's Resort to get my next gym badge. Getting there was a bit of a pain though, since I had to sneak through the beach, which is full of pretty powerful enemies, and then swim around this annoying ass wall, which makes it really easy to tell that this gym was kinda just dropped here late in development. It feels pretty out of place. But hey, if you're mad this game doesn't have gym challenges, there you go! A wall! The Sadachi trio all start simping, which is very funny, and we rush in to take on the water-type gym. Because Jack's gym was so easy, I was pretty confident going into this gym, so much so that pretty much no one on my team was fully leveled. I still managed to get through the first trainer with no casualties though, and started the second one expecting to also breeze through it. It started with a misclick, causing me to attack with Boogie Bag, who deals next to no damage. And then, several misplays and thoughtless moves later, Sadachi, Kiryu, and Boogie Bag are all barely holding it together after getting hit with an MP skill. And because I massively underestimated how strong Coconut Job is, Sadachi was killed when he had literally no reason to be. The fact that Sadachi, out of everyone, was the first death really fucking stung. Not only because he was one of my strongest team members at the time, but since he's a character in the story, I had to watch his smiling face in every cutscene, cursed to watch as his body is puppeteered in front of me, taunting me for my failure as a trainer for the rest of the run. And even after my team barely scraped past the second trainer, Queen was more than happy to kick me while I was down. Despite being a water-type gym, Queen opened the fight with a dojo master who brought both of my grass types down to half health with one swing each. Thankfully, Kiryu managed to take out him and the rest of Queen's opening team with his strong as fuck MP skill, leaving only 3 guys left to take down. But because I was too scared to send out I Am Groot, who honestly probably could have taken them down easily, Queen's Death Sentencer ended up killing Kiryu, Boogie Bag, and Wilter, literally gunning down half my team, leaving me with Karaki, who has like no health, Big Lo, who's at a type disadvantage here, and I Am Groot, who's already barely holding on. Somehow, I managed to win without anyone else dying, but holy shit, everything went as wrong as it possibly could have in this gym. You can tell I was really bummed out here since 2 of the Sujimon I used to replace my team were a Grounds Reaper that I called Depression and a Forsaken Samurai that I called Revenge, since he had the same move that Queen used to kill half my team. I think I wanted to use the move myself and be like, this is for my previous team, or something stupid like that. Anyway, after all of that, I decided to head off to Revolve to process everything that happened with some karaoke. Now, you're probably thinking, oh cool, the Nuzlocke is halfway done, there shouldn't be that much left to talk about, but you'd be very mistaken. All of this stuff that I just talked about happened in the first 5-ish hour long stream. There are still 5 more of these, which is why I'm actually splitting this video into multiple parts. I'm working on the second part right now, and I'm hoping to get it done within a few weeks, but if you don't want to wait to see what happens, once again, all the streams are right here on my channel, so go check those out if you want to see me experience the 5 stages of grief. So yeah, I'm gonna go cry now. You all take care.